10 o'clock now, I'm gonna call this meeting to order here. I guess, Richard, you want to go ahead and do another invocation right quick?
Be my honor, Judge. Father God, we're so grateful that we have this opportunity to gather as a community and make decisions to better our community. Thank you, Father, for these dedicated public servants who give of their time and their talents and their treasure to make Hood County a better place for all who live and visit. Father, we pray your wisdom and guidance upon this body, and that your blessings will be upon all in Hood County. In the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I pledge to the great state of Texas.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay. All right, we have one item on the agenda today, this special call workshop. Today is Thursday, April the 25th, 2024, and that is to discuss a revised jail master plan for additional jail capacity and refurbishment of current facility with representatives from DRG. And I see these gentlemen are here today. So, Sheriff, did you say that we had somebody on a...
Yeah, Judge, Commissioners, last week I talked to Commissioner Samuelson about seeing if we could get an updated facility analysis done by the Texas Jail Commission. So we didn't get that back yet, but on the line we've got Executive Director Brandon Wood on the phone, or on the life size, whatever that's called, that box over there. So we'll let him talk, I guess, to start with. So good morning, Mr. Wood.
Good morning, Judge, Commissioners. Brandon Wood, Executive Director of the Texas Commission on Jail Standards. I was contacted last week regarding the previous facility needs analysis that had been performed for Hood County, and I'm going to work off the assumption that y'all are familiar with that previous analysis. If not, we can provide you a copy of the analysis that was conducted well over a year ago. And one of the challenges that we face is relying upon other entities that provide demographic information for counties across the state of Texas to update their data on a regular basis. And previously, when we performed the needs analysis for Hood County, the Texas Demographic Center had not released any of their updated information prior to the 2020 census data. And the Census Bureau has also released additional population estimates up to the year 2023. So whenever I was contacted, my recommendation was that the county go ahead and request that we provide you an updated needs analysis, which we are currently working on, and make you aware of the fact that while the previous analysis had Hood County growing at an extremely high rate, while we don't think that it is growing at that rate that we previously projected, it continues to grow at a very high rate. And we want to make sure that you have as much information as possible so that you can make the best decision possible for your constituents. County jails are extremely expensive, and we always encourage counties to look at all options available to them, to include pre-trial diversion, pre-jail diversion, and reviewing your local criminal justice system operations. One of the things that I like to encourage counties to do is take a look at your average length of stay of your inmates in your county jail to make sure that your courts are operating as efficiently as possible, because if you have individuals that are staying in your jail longer than absolutely necessary, that is an added cost to the county, and the most expensive place that can occur is at your county jail. So we will be gathering additional information from the Sheriff's Office to include the previous 12 months' work of your inmate population, to include those inmates that are being housed out of county, along with the ones that you continue to house there in the county, and compare that to the updated population estimates and population projections that have been provided by the Texas Demographic Center and the Census Bureau. One of the things I would like to point out is that the Texas Demographic Center traditionally uses a more conservative projection methodology. And to give you an idea, for the year 2023, the Texas Demographic Center had estimated or projected that the county population would be approximately 64,000 individuals. The 2023 Census Bureau estimate of the population for Hood County was 67,774. So as you can see, there is a difference between those two numbers, and we think that we want to, take a look at that and see which one more accurately reflects what is actually occurring in Hood County. Y'all are sitting there on the edge of the Metroplex. You're touching what is considered the Texas Triangle. And any county that we have been working with over the past 10 years that is part of that I-35, I-45, and I-10 corridor has seen some tremendous growth. And we want to make sure that y'all have updated information, because the last thing you probably want to do is go out and have a bond issue and you build a jail that you then have to add on to within the next 10 years based upon the continued growth within the county. We'll also be taking a look at some of the independent school district numbers to find out what it is that they are looking at in regards to future student enrollment population. We have found those to be very useful in projecting future county populations as well. And we just want to take the time to make sure that we get this as correct as possible, but also caution you that it is an estimate, it is an analysis, and while the one thing that we do know that Hood County is growing, trying to do a 10-year projection and a 20-year projection becomes very difficult. That 10-year projection number is probably going to be pretty close to what you actually experience, but as we move into that second decade, we want to caution the county to be mindful of what is continuing to occur, and we always encourage counties to take that into account as you embark upon any sort of criminal justice planning project. So with that, I can give you some very basic numbers. We've looked at a couple of different scenarios. One of the scenarios that we looked at actually wound up splitting the difference between the Texas Demographic Center's projection and what the U.S. Census Bureau had estimated the county population was. And with us having now 4 years of Census Bureau data, we feel a little bit more comfortable in attempting to try to provide you at least that first 10-year projection in regards to what Hood County's population will be. Texas Demographic Center had estimated that the population would be close to 71,000 individuals in the year 2030. If you look at the Census Bureau's population estimate, you're very near that number already in 2023, and I would not be surprised if the 2024 census estimate number comes back at approximately 70,000 individuals residing in Hood County. I also want to take the time to ask you, the people that live there in Hood County, what it is that y'all are seeing. Do you have a local economic chamber of commerce that is providing you with any projections that can give you an idea of what the county and the city of Granbury is experiencing that y'all might be able to provide us, which can then help firm up and make that projection more accurate? Y'all hear from your constituents, I guarantee, on a daily basis regarding multiple issues, and y'all are the ones best suited to tell us exactly what that county that you are responsible for providing is actually experiencing. So, Judge, do you have a general idea as to how accurate that Census Bureau estimate of 67,000 in the year 2023 was? Do you feel that that's pretty close to what's actually occurring?
I really don't. I think we have a lot more than that. Don't you think so, Sheriff? What do you think? More like, give your 911 numbers.
Yeah, and it's hard to tell sometimes exactly because of the weekenders and vacation people and all of that. But yeah, I believe we're more than 65,000 for sure, and probably more than 70,000 easily anyway. But we don't have that exact number at this point in time.
You mentioned the 911 assignment of numbers and updating that call system. We have utilized information from those systems in years past as well, especially rural counties that are starting to see a significant increase in population growth, because it has provided us a good idea of what's actually occurring out in your unincorporated areas, which the county is responsible for providing services to. So if you have some of that data, we may be asking you to provide some basic information on the number of new 911 pings that you are getting, and that assignment as well, because again, that is a good indicator for growth in the rural unincorporated areas as much as anything else.
We'll get you whatever information we have that you need.
Okay. One of the other pieces of information that I was interested in trying to make sure that we receive is, like I mentioned earlier, we do like to try to find out what your average length of stay is, because if there's a way to find efficiencies in your local criminal justice system and reduce your cost, we definitely want to encourage the county to explore those options. And average length of stay of inmates is one of those very important pieces of information. And I'd seen some preliminary information that appeared to have been pulled from your inmate management system that you have in place. And the question that I had was, the average length of stay that it is calculating, does it incorporate inmates that are housed out of county, or do you know if it only is calculating inmates that are being housed at the Hood County Jail?
Now, Eric, this is a report that Owen pulled out of Spillman, but I'm not sure if the source was just our local jail, or if it included inmates in the entire system, including out of county housed.
I'm going to say it's all of them.
Okay.
So every report that we pull shows numbers from local and housed out as well. So
Do you want to see
I'm
it?
going to say yes, sure.
This is what
Okay.
Owen said.
So if it is showing the inmates, it includes your inmates being housed out of county, then
Yes.
I would probably have to say that Hood County is doing a very good job of being as efficient as possible, because your average length of stay is, I believe it was around 25 days.
Okay.
Does that sound correct? Because if it is, then you're probably as efficient as any county out there. So kudos to the county for ensuring that that piece of the criminal justice system is moving as quickly as possible. It also demonstrates that you have a very transient inmate population, meaning that they're not staying any longer than necessary. And you can probably justify that by speaking with the sheriff, who will tell you that he probably puts out just as many people as he puts in each and every day. And that is not a bad thing. That is how you want your criminal justice system working, and making sure that they are moving through that process and reducing the cost that the county has to incur for providing public safety.
Yeah, they come and they go, and like today, we have 248 in the system and 77 inmates out of the county. Far as, I think it was Monday last week, we had 25 people that had been in the system for over a year, way over a year in some cases. And I think Monday when I looked at it, we had 23. We did make some runs to prison, so that I think a couple of them left, but I believe we still have more than 20 that have been here over a year.
And that would be a segment of your inmate population I would highly encourage you to take a look at. Anytime that you're approaching 10% of your overall inmate population being incarcerated for longer than a year, you definitely want to make sure that you're addressing those first and foremost. Those normally are associated with capital type cases or very high level felonies, along with the potential for individuals that are awaiting transfer to a state hospital for competency restoration. All three of those are long and very tenuous processes, so you want to make sure that you have as few of those as possible within your system, because they do continue to eat up bed days, and they continue to be a significant cost to the county. So if those would be the ones that I would definitely want to make sure that the county is keeping tabs on and encouraging all the partners within the criminal justice system to expedite them as much as possible, and you're not taking extremely long delays in moving them through the criminal justice system. Two other items, I mentioned them very briefly, that we always encourage counties to explore is any sort of pretrial diversion that you may have in place, whether it be electronic monitoring, increased probation, that may be a possibility, and then your pre-jail diversion. These are programs in which, rather than law enforcement taking these individuals that they encounter straight to the county jail for booking, if they're experiencing a medical episode or a mental health episode, do you have a resource where you can convert these individuals and ensure that they receive the care that they need, and then to keep them out of your county jail? Just to throw you an idea out there, Harris County has a pre-jail diversion center, and it's basically a $1 versus $5 difference in regards to cost. So I think that anybody that wants to look for efficiencies and wise use of funds, they do explore those. So if you have a good relationship with your local mental health authority, I would highly encourage you to find out if there are any opportunities to start drawing down state dollars and grants to establish any sort of pre-jail diversion program, so that you funnel these people out of your criminal justice system and ensure that they get the assistance that they need, and potentially keep them from coming back into the criminal justice system at a later date. A $1 versus $5 charge, I think, should appeal to just about anybody involved, along with ensuring that you are providing mental health services to these individuals, because if you speak with any law enforcement entity, they will tell you that the challenges associated with dealing with inmates that have mental health issues consume an inordinate amount of resources, funding, time, staff, and bed space within the county jails. So we encourage counties to always look at those programs and see if there's an opportunity to establish those. With that, again, appreciate the opportunity to speak with y'all this morning. Be happy to answer any questions. We will be revising the needs analysis based upon the most updated information that has been released, and get that back to you as soon as possible, because I believe that y'all are exploring options now as to what you need to do in order to provide for public safety and expanding your jail space. Thank you, Judge.
Good deal. Thank y'all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
Appreciate your time.
You have any questions?
I guess, does anybody have any questions? Otherwise, we'll let him get back to his daily schedule.
I was just going to kind of provide some information on what we're seeing just based on the real estate data, and this may just be a function of interest rates and people not wanting to sell their house at 2% interest and go buy a house at 7%. But in the local paper, our local real estate group puts out statistics on how long houses are on the market and how sales are going, and we are starting to see a trend over the last 3 to 6 months of homes being on the market for a lot longer, closer to 90 days, and home prices starting to come down and stabilize. So that could just be, we saw a big blip during COVID where prices and homes were, you couldn't even put a house on the market before it was already sold, and sold at above what somebody was asking because of bidding wars. Well, that has cooled off considerably, and we are now seeing homes starting to come down in price and level off, and also be on the market longer. But again, interest rates are north of 7%, so that once that changes, we may see the growth come back. We did have a big jump between 2020 and 2021, where our growth rate was 4.3%, and now, according to the Census Bureau, that's kind of starting to level off as well, but we'll wait and see what your numbers say versus what's projected on the U.S. Census Bureau.
Yes, ma'am. And I think keeping apprised of the real estate market is a good factor to be made aware of. We would also want to take a look at new home construction as well, and I think that can be judged very well by that 911 assignment issue that the sheriff has spoken to previously. So we definitely would like to incorporate all that information into the revised report as much as possible, so that we can provide Hood County and the court with as much up-to-date information as possible to assist you in your decision-making.
Thank you. The report that was issued about a year ago by the Texas Commission on Jail Standards shows that Hood County by 2030 will be at 87,000 plus. Will that be, you look at that data also to incorporate this on the new needs analysis?
Yes, sir. We will review the previous needs analysis that was issued, and one of the things that we do on a regular basis is go back and review previous needs analysis for other counties to see just how close we were in our projections and predictions, because we've never been spot on with any of them, but we are normally pretty close, especially within that first 10-year period. The first time that we did conduct this needs analysis for the county, we used an extremely aggressive growth rate, because the first 2 to 3 years that we were seeing, the county saw quite a population explosion. And, while that, demonstrates growth and the desire to live in Hood County and the environment which y'all been able to provide, it also comes with challenges, the infrastructure needs that come with it, and the decisions that y'all have to make. So we will go back and take a look at that previous analysis and reference that, and provide the explanatory notes that indicate that, the data that was used was indicative of a very high growth rate at that time. And we'll find out just how close that was and how accurate it was.
Hey, Mr. Wood, do you have a kind of a ballpark idea of when you'll have this revised information back to us?
My goal is to have it done within the next 7 to 10 days.
Oh, okay. I was wondering, it'll be a couple more months or what? So I'm glad I asked that question. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I think that's it.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Very good information.
Have a good morning.
You too.
Thank you. 7 to 10 days is good.
Yeah, that's pretty fast.
Do you have any other questions of us before we turn it
Right.
over to the people from
Well,
DRG?
in, the report, the inmate custody log dated April 23rd, I count 25 inmates at a greater than 365 days. And there's several that are in the 340 above that number. But, that's, to me, that's kind of a concern, especially based on what, Mr. Wood just stated also, that, we've got those individuals in there that we got 2 that are over 900 days.
Right. We got several that are in 500s and some high 400s.
There's, with the 2 that are over 900 days each, and, don't know what the history of the background on that is, but that is a, concern, because that means we've been housing those individuals and they haven't gone to trial yet.
And I think a lot of it, have to do with obviously like the charge that they're here for, where they are on however the DA handles those things. I will say some positive news on things, and I think we all can agree, since changes have happened in office with the courts, that a lot of stuff has gone through a whole lot quicker. It's way more efficient, in my opinion, from my experience seeing it since things have changed. It's gone through a lot faster, or we're getting people sentenced a lot faster to whatever it might be, that be probation or safe P or TDC, state jail, whatever it might be. so much of an influx of that, we also have to take consideration that we have to wait for the state afterwards. So I'll say that right now we have over 20 people that are paper ready to go to prison. But now it's a waiting game for the state to say, okay, Hood County, of all the 250 plus counties in the state of Texas that we have to deal with, let's schedule these people to go to prison. That takes time. So we may one week have a very low list of those that are going to be leaving to go to prison. The next week we may have a list of 15 people that are going to be going to prison. It all depends on the state and them getting them scheduled. Obviously, the whole within 45 days, that's the big deal to make sure they're out of here from the moment they're paper ready, not sentenced, but paper ready. As long as they're out of here within 45 days. After the 45-day mark, there's other things that go into play, reimbursements from the state, et cetera. But from what I've seen so far, and the way that we are able to do paper-ready pin packets now, it's all secured online through emails rather than having to send through mail. So we're able to schedule a whole lot faster now. And all this has been happening like in the last year or two. I mean, this is very new, but it's way more efficient than it ever has been. But obviously the state has others besides Hood County they're scheduling too, because population issues are across the state. It's not just us. And so, but again, from what I've seen, the way our justice system is working, getting people in, sentenced, and going is much more efficient. Obviously, there's other avenues that we can look at, I'm sure, to make it even more efficient. I'm sure they're working on that every day, but just from my experience, it's a whole lot better than it ever has been. So.
Eric, when you're talking about the changes, you're talking about the agreement between the county court at law and the district judge to be able to have some trials in the county court at law? Is that what you're referencing?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so you're seeing more trials. Well, Judge Haddix is here. I don't know if he wants to come and speak to the number of trials that he's had or the number of cases that have been gone through his.
They've been working hard with that. I know there's some other ways that county court at law could move us farther forward, but I guess it's not totally up to him on getting that done. I don't know how to make that all work, if it's the court or with the district judge but there's more he could do. But yeah, he's done amazing in the time that he's been the judge, and so things are going faster. District court has dockets that are way longer than they used to be, so things are moving faster, and people are still out there breaking the law. So they come into the system and they leave, and some are. I just looking. I brought today's list of everything, and looking at the ones that have been here just under 1,000 days, 944. That's murder cases. So that could be defense attorneys filing motions back and forth to cause things to drag out a little bit more, but it's up to the judge to get that scheduled and the DA working together with the defense attorney. So it's not all just one person that's bogging it down. But yeah, the more we could have taken the cases, then the faster we can move this forward. So
what are you seeing, Judge Haddix, as far as cases coming to your court?
Well, I bark all the time, and it's just me barking. I don't have enough work. I enjoy it, and of course my staff is busy. Just like today, we don't have anything on our docket. We did not have anything yesterday that mattered. We have available time to handle more cases. I'll be honest. I've been in the DA's chair, I've been in the judge's chair, I've been a defense attorney, so I see it from every perspective. We have local resources we can spend better, and we're learning. Judge Buffkin and I are just beginning to work together, and this is all new to Hood County and the processes. A new district clerk, going to get a new county clerk. All these things are coming together, but I think these guys will attest it's working. And it's not, maybe it's working as fast as we want it to, but it's working, and we're going to do better.
So then
I'm disappointed. I come to you guys months ago and asked you to increase the DA staff and elevate their salaries. And as that takes effect, I think you're going to continue to see things get better. But can we handle more? Yes, ma'am.
So since this coordination effort started, what, about a year ago?
Yes, ma'am.
So how many cases have you tried that were?
Probably a dozen. At least a
Or
dozen.
maybe not tried, but disposed, I guess is the word, whether it went to trial or plea,
You use the word dispose, 20.
20?
Yes, ma'am. But we could do more. Tell me.
Well, and I think that there's an intangible in there also, in that people aren't riding it out to the end of a plea, because the pleas are getting called in faster also, right?
You're right.
So, I mean, the whole thing is sped up because of what is going on in its entirety. Like I said, I think there's some intangible numbers in there, so to put a for sure number on that, I don't know as though that's.
The ones I'm directly putting my finger on is in that range, but you're right, because if people know that they can't ride it out, they go ahead and brings it to a conclusion. The decisions get made quicker, and we don't really know whether it's the impact of what we're doing or not, but we do know, and I think Officer Tuberville said that, we're seeing a quicker turnaround than we were. I'm disappointed it didn't better, but I think we are still on the upward slide. We made some promises to you that we've not kept, but we're getting there, and I just think with more time, you're going to see more improvement. Things could happen, though, to compel it, to force it, and I've visited with some of you individually about that. How about changing the jurisdiction of my court, or creating more, or forcing more cases into my court through the system and giving us more direct control? We need to look at that, but most of those are going to be short-term fixes for the jail population, not a long-term fix in terms of physical resources for the jail. Right. But in the short term, we could direct or force more cases into our court, and that would give us more direct authority over those cases to push them.
So if that happened, and more cases went to your court, where would the prosecutors be? Still in the DA's office, or?
Well, I can't speak to everyone here because they're not here in the room, but I do know I've had conversations with County Attorney Mills, and he's more than eager to devote him and his staff to more cases in our court. I'm a statutory county court, and the statute can be changed to incorporate more cases to it. And if those cases were assigned to my court, then Mills would have the authority to prosecute them. And he has been more than willing and volunteering his time, speaking with me and others, that he'd be all over it.
So we have available resources to even improve the speed that we're going now, is what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am. There's no question. I have more time on my hands that I could devote to it, and willing to do it. Because I know y'all got lots of pressures y'all are having to fight and keep up with here. But this is going to be a short-term fix.
Yes.
We can increase the efficiency of these courts and help your jail population today, but this growth and everything you're talking about still has to be addressed too. And of course, the physical resources of the jail are not something I can really speak to.
But from an efficiency standpoint, just looking at the big picture, no matter what happens down the road, using the resources that are already here in the county to move things along as quickly as possible should be a goal that we have no matter what we do with the jail.
Yes, ma'am. There's no question. And the politics of it all, too, in dealing with our state, there may be another district court pushed upon the county here. You'll have to address the physical resources for that, which may elevate these efficiencies we're talking about. But all of the courts, whether it's one district court or two district courts, all need to work together like this to keep the workload even, so to speak, to where all courts are operating. Where one's not sort of idle while the other two are working hard. We need to keep it consistent where everybody's working, because that'll get more cases through.
So if we look at the, I'm looking at today's inmate custody log, 171 locally housed inmates, and there's 14 that I count misdemeanors in there.
Yes, sir.
Which tells me the misdemeanors are cycling through very efficiently. But what would you estimate state jail and third-degree felonies? How many of the jail population would you just give us an estimate that are third-degree felonies or state jails?
Well, do let me make that an estimate, but Commissioner Samuelson come to me about a month ago. We pulled the records down. My staff and I did an analysis. It's 1/3 of the jail population in rough numbers that are third degrees in state jail felonies, which you could say, hey, is nonviolent. offenders.
And
Could be
there,
pushed off onto my court.
I'm sorry, Judge.
So you could push that off onto our court to do the nonviolent offenders and get those people, a third of the jail, we could work faster.
And there's an entire statutory scheme for the county court at law where many, many counties have specific jurisdictional additions, add-ons that they are capable of putting through their system because of the statute in a given county, correct?
Yes, sir, you amend the statute, get the legislature to amend the statute to establish jurisdiction for those courts, and it's done statewide. It's nothing unique that we're
And that would be probably something, I would think that our state senator could almost, that would kind of be a consent agenda item for your county?
with your rep and your senator, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I wonder why we're not, what do you think about that? I mean, it sounds to me like that we need to talk to our state senator, doesn't it?
Well, it's going to be a coordination with your state leadership, also with your district court judge and their staffs as well. I mean, it's a coordinated effort, and we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves and leave anyone behind. All of these agencies have to be considered, but it would be a short-term, I think, benefit to the efficiency of the courts if that's what we're addressing.
Well, here's my concern. I've heard that our state senator mentioned that sometime in the future they may be looking at another district court here.
Yes, sir.
And, you know, it's been talked about off and on for years up here, and that's very possible, but that's up to the state of Texas to do that, and that's going to be up to their budget and their parameters that they have to go by to decide if they're going to add a district court to us, to our county. And so that could happen in 2 years. It could be 5 years.
Well, they have a limited amount of money they're going to spend on the judicial system. And they use these population numbers to justify the new courts. And you got to know the growth is all going to Houston and Dallas and San Antonio. That's where the new courts are going to go. Whether or not our numbers will justify a new district court will depend on where they establish those numbers. But here we are, 5 years now after the census, and they've not established a new district court anywhere. They haven't addressed judicial pay in 10 or 12 years in Texas. I just don't know that the legislature is really interested in expending resources on the judicial system. And I think we're seeing the problems associated with it, with our jail populations and all of that, and the prison populations. They're not spending their money that way.
But, you know, I guess.
There's no guarantee you're going to get a district court. There's all this talk about it, but we're not seeing that. And I'm not hearing it in terms of what I'm being fed from the judicial leadership in Austin.
And I absolutely agree with your comment that there's no guarantees.
There's just not.
And so, you know, my concern is this, you know, we've been kicking around a new jail, expansion of the current jail, refurbishing current jail, you know, more space, more rooms. And it seems to me like that, at least in the short term, as you've mentioned, if you're over here ready, willing, and able, and because it's just going to be a matter of getting the cases over there, and we can do whatever we need to do to get our state senator to help us expand your jurisdiction where you can take those cases. It seems to me like, at least for now, until we do get a district court, I don't understand why we can't get that done.
I don't either, and it would also give you someone you could call in here and fuss at if the jail population is getting out of hand in terms of those jurisdictional responsibilities. If you put the state jails in the third degrees in my court, you call me in here and say, why are you letting that population build? What's the problem?
And that all those are components. He talked about pre-trial diversion, pre-jail diversion. There's a lot of components to this besides brick and mortar and space, right?
I personally visited with the prosecutors in this county, encouraging them that they'd have my support in terms of developing a pre-trial diversion program. We don't have one. There's just not one. But I have encouraged both of them that they would politically be supported by me and encouraged by me publicly and professionally establishing those kind of programs, because they are very useful in the right circumstances. But are they going to be a solution? No, sir. They will help a little, but you can't rely on those programs to diminish that population enough to matter to you people.
But it's a component, another
It's a little
component.
component. It's not a solution.
So pre-trial, you say we don't have a pre-trial diversion? What about pre-jail diversion?
Same thing.
Okay.
Same thing. Pre-jail would mean you caught someone that had medical emergency, that the county didn't want the burden of caring for them, and there was no danger or risk to the public. You divert them from the jail completely, where the responsibility is shifted somewhere else.
Okay.
But we have nowhere else to take them except the emergency room. I'm sure the sheriff will tell you that.
Yeah.
And they don't want them. Those kind of resources in a small county like this are just
So-
not there.
Even with all that, you're able to accomplish and, getting some of the cases, out of there, the jail population continues to climb. It's not going, accolades to what, is being done, but at the same time, the numbers, and the inmates is going up, more than, what you're able to accomplish.
You heard me refer several times to this as a short-term solution.
I understand.
These are short-term because I don't know that it will keep up with growth. So
But,
you're right.
the numbers are unreal.
Yeah. Growth is going to affect everything I'm saying, but today, short-term relief
Yes, sir.
we can give you, long-term relief, these numbers and things that this
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Wood is going to provide to you will address
Thank you.
the number down there.
And I think we just need to utilize every tool that we can.
Right.
You need to work
That's
it
the
out.
bottom line, every tool that we can, even if it's short-term, as you say, because if we decided to start a project in the morning on expanding this jail, for instance, it's still going to take some time to do it.
Oh, yeah.
And we need to be in a situation where we're utilizing, here's my deal. We need to be utilizing what we have. And if you're over here ready and willing and able to do the work, and you're not, and we've got people in the jail that you could work through the system, it seems to me it bothers me that we can't get those work through the system.
We're doing better every day. And Officer Turville telling you, it is better than it's ever been probably. And the efficiencies are developing, and how we do the paperwork and how we get the people transported, all of that has to come together. But you're seeing some benefit. We do hope to have more.
But you still have capacity.
Said that the year before last that they did disposed of 400 cases, and then last year, with y'all working together, y'all got rid of like 600 cases.
Yes, sir.
So that's a huge increase, but it
Yes, sir.
still didn't make any difference because we got,
More
the
in-
jail population still is crowded.
And Judge, that's what I said. I'm disappointed that I can't show you better results but I think if you take that into consideration, you're seeing the
would have been
benefit. Because it could be a
worse.
whole lot worse around
Yeah.
here than it is.
But you still have capacity between you and the prosecutors in Matt Mills' office. You still have capacity.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we have,
Definitely, and we
so-
were willing to do it.
is there anything that, because, okay, we're talking about getting with Senator Birdwell and Slauson, but their legislature's not going to meet until next January, and we're looking at like a year from now before that legislation would be passed, and then it might not be effective till September, as some of the legislations are. Maybe these types of things are effective right
They
away?
can run them straight through.
Okay.
yes.
But it's still a year. Is there anything statutorily that has to take place before more sharing of your resources and the resources in the county attorney's office has to happen, or can it?
Well, as it stands right now, the county attorney cannot prosecute felons.
Okay.
We're with the DA's office, and that's why I was in here months ago talking with y'all about the DA's budget and supporting their efforts. All we can do until the legislature acts is elevate the cooperation between
Okay.
Judge Buffkin's court and mine.
Okay.
And we're doing that.
Okay, and
really working
with
well
the Senate Bill 22, he is able to increase his staff, so that
Yes.
should,
Y'all gave him some money. I think the state has given him some grant money. Those kinds of excuses are diminished. So I'm not in here preaching to you that you ought to be giving the DA more money. Y'all have done that. It's more now just a matter of either statutorily changing it, as Commissioner Eagle was talking about, or just letting Judge Buffkin and I continue to do what we're doing in the short term to try to elevate these efficiencies.
okay. Thank you.
I'd love to have it all in my court where I could just tell Matt Mills, this is what you're going to do next week. I'm the judge. And that's how it works. When we go through the district court, it doesn't work that way. Judge Buffkin controls his own docket. And what he allows us to do, we do. I don't have the authority to step in and tell them what they're going to do. And wouldn't, of course.
Yeah.
It's their jurisdiction.
Yeah, I think that, considering that, putting that whole thing in the big picture, it's really in the best interest of the county and the taxpayers and also the inmates they're not getting a speedy trial. So
There's two ways of looking at that if you're an inmate. If I know I'm good for it, I'm going to have to do some time, I'd just soon do it.
In the county jail versus...
jail, they're going to feed me good and take good care of me.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't say that the state has that different opinion on that either, to be honest with you. I think they're in the same crunch. They don't have enough beds, so if I don't know as though there's a whole lot of pressure from their perspective to get these inmates through faster, because then it's on them instead of that. Right now, they can kind of leave it on the county. So I think that's...
Well, there's the other inmate that wants to get it over with, get it done now, and resolve it quick. And I'm innocent, I want my trial.
Right.
We really have to balance that. But you're right, it's not just us we have to consider, everyone else has to consider it too. And every county is going through what we're going through. It's a statewide issue.
Thanks for...
I just visited with these other judges that I know have expanded their jurisdictions trying to help out their district courts that the legislature won't give them another court, so what do we do? And some judges are working 65 hours a week, other judges are not working 10, and they're trying to balance that out across the county courts at law to pull some of the weight off the district courts until the legislature starts funding those courts and adding to them. That's been the solution. Why don't we do it is the question, and that's where Commissioner Eagle is. Why haven't we been doing this? Well, we're trying. I'm trying to get around the legislature doing it with this agreement with Judge Buffkin that everyone's blessed, and it's working. We're trying.
What about the two guys that are in there almost 900 days? I mean,
They're murder trials.
Criminal law, but a lot of motions have gone back and forth. Why hasn't that come to trial? If you have the choice of either staying in Hood County Jail or going to the penitentiary, the prisoner's going to opt to stay in the Hood County Jail.
Well, and there's lots of reasons for that. If I was in jail for 900 days, I'd want something done with my case.
You would think.
Yes, but again, you're asking me a question that I cannot answer because I don't even know who the inmate is. But if as a defense lawyer, I wouldn't want one of my clients in jail for 900 days without me doing something for them.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's a question of getting paid. I mean, that's a good reason,
Yeah.
Highlighters.
Paid, so he's not going to try your case.
Thank you.
And there's going to be a point.
That just doesn't make sense to me.
Well,
Those are-
and
Yeah, I've looked at a couple of
You're looking at
those.
the wrong person to answer the question because felonies are just not in my jurisdiction.
Yeah, I've looked at a couple of those, and they have had court dates, but they've been rescheduled and rescheduled and rescheduled up to 17 times, so.
There is so many, though, factors go into that. You just can't individualize each one and go to
Right.
criticizing or blaming people.
No, I'm just saying that's
But
what I
you're right.
see.
They need to be looked at. It just ain't right to put somebody in jail for 900 days unless you're really working hard to get a resolution. And if you are, you're doing the best you can. If you're not, then it needs to be fixed. Now, we're not talking, and I wouldn't suggest that the county court at law take over all felony jurisdiction. It'd just be the cases, the routine nonviolent offenders, the third-degree felonies and state jails, things like that. Because we do have our responsibilities to the misdemeanor docket that we have to honor too in the county's business.
Well, does Matt Mills and Ryan Sinclair have enough lawyers and enough support staff to bring the cases? That seems to be the deal. Like when Ryan had 2 or 3 people that leave, I understood that right away, even though it wasn't budgeted. Hey, we got to do something. You've got to give them. That's an emergency situation. He's got to have the staff. He can't try everything. We had to give him the authority to hire people.
He does
Y'all
have the
did,
staff.
I
Now.
supported that effort too. Y'all did.
Yeah, you do
And it helps.
And he's got now with the SB 22, he's hiring 2 more support staff. And that, when I went to talk to him, that was one of the things he said is he needed, his staff the lawyers have the cases, but the staff does a lot of the pretrial and post-trial work, and that he needed those additional, he couldn't put any more work on his administrative staff.
We've heard Officer Turnbull tell you the flow of paperwork's working better. They get credit for that too. His staff, Officer Mr. Sinclair's
Yep,
staff,
so
gets credit for that work going through too. It's
I mean, it's just been a couple of weeks since he put those jobs out for Senate Bill 22, so I'm not sure he's got the people on site yet, but,
there's hope.
yeah.
All of these little things are coming into play to increase this efficiency that we've been seeing.
And it is more efficient. You know, I couldn't imagine what it would look like population-wise if none of this was in place and it wasn't as efficient as it is today. So we're thankful for it, but again, the sheriff mentioned it, our population is still going to grow in the jail, not just at county, but also take into consideration that a lot of individuals that come through our jail are not Hood County residents. They don't live here. We're connected to that triangle that Mr. Wood was talking about. People come down 377 all the time and get picked up, pulled over with drugs, whatever it might be, stolen vehicles, name it. And they're getting put in our jail for however long. You know, and that's another thing, you want to get people bonded out. Well, if they're not local and they live across the state of Texas, then unless you've got a lot of money in your back pocket, good luck getting the bondsman to bond you out, because the liability of you running or whatever is going to be too high for them to risk putting money out for you. So you're going to be stuck in here for a while and you don't even live here. So
Something Mr. Wood didn't mention that Eric hadn't mentioned yet either is the undocumented population that we have that are not being counted. But they're here, and we're seeing them in our court. The number of non-English speakers is just booming on us. And
What do you mean they're not being counted?
well, in the population growth. And
Oh, okay. They're
911 numbers,
yes.
these people aren't being counted because they're just coming in on us in waves, and no one's managing that. And they're
I thought you
coming
meant
into our system.
I thought you meant the population in the jail, but those are, if they're in the jail, they're counted. I had a question about that, the ICE, so the ones that are being held for ICE, do we get reimbursed at all for that? I know you said it takes 45 days for, if they're waiting for a bed before the state will reimburse, but what if we're waiting for ICE? Has nothing happened? They can wait for ICE forever, or what?
wait for ICE.
Okay.
ICE is by law 48 hours. Once we notify they're ready for your pickup, they're here within 48 hours.
Okay.
And that's their role too. It's a part of the detainer. So within 48 hours after they're finished with us, and we have all the documents saying, all right, they're ready for ICE pickup, we notify ICE. They say we'll be here. Sometimes they show up at 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning to pick them up, but they're here. I've never seen them not show up
in 40.
If they don't show up within 48 hours, that individual can be released.
Okay.
So, and obviously we don't want that, but
And-
they're on top of it.
So when those people are arrested, they broke a law of the great state of Texas, and they come before whichever court they need to, and after that's all taken care of, whatever route they're going to go, then when the court says we're done with them, then as soon as we get that paperwork, call ICE, and they come, and I had a lawyer, attorney that was threatening me because I was holding him, but it was less than, his timeline and the state's timeline were two different things, and so he was out of here well before his 48 hours, and they always come, like Eric said, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and they pick them up and they're gone, and that's the way they've always done it. So that's a good system that works like it's supposed to.
Good, thank you.
So over a period of time, we have got more because of everything going on the border. We usually have, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, but then in the last year, it's gone as high as 19, 15, 16, and so it's increased. And that doesn't sound like a big number, but going from 3 or 4 to almost 20, then that is a big number. So.
Those people are not going to be counted, though, in these estimates, Mr. Wood, and everybody's going to
Right.
get, because we don't
They're
know how many
undocumented.
or where they're coming from or when they're going to be.
Appreciate you coming up.
Thank you. And another note with, years ago, I get heck all the time because where's your road crew? They're not out there anymore. Well, no, we haven't had one since the the courthouse was refurbed, I still had 6 or 8 or so that counted that could be a trustee and go outside. But that was because of the misdemeanors. Now, the way Judge Messina did it and the way Judge Haddix is doing it, they're weekenders. So they're out on work release to work, get something done for their family and themselves, and then they come in and spend Friday night, Saturday night, and into Sunday night. And so we can't put them out on a road crew, and so that's why the populations go up on the weekends, because of weekenders and then the normal people that get into trouble. So that part of the system is working great. So on a Monday, all we got in there is pretty much people that are already felons or working on becoming a convicted felon. So, and we have very few misdemeanors. So anyway, I guess we've taken up a lot of time to hash all this stuff over. So the system's working. It could be a little better, but yeah, the problem is needing more space. So I guess.
And we want programs, you know, they were talking about those programs that can be facilitated, and we want to facilitate those programs. We don't have the space for it. And talk about mental health, that was a huge talking point from Mr. Wood about mental health in jails. No, you don't want those individuals in your jails, but it's going to happen. We're the largest mental health hospital is a county jail, because what else are you going to do with them until they can be, especially if an offense occurs. You know, what else can you do? Because there's no divergent system, nothing like that. You know, we have to take care of them. Now, we do partner with Pecan Valley, and there are available in-house services that Pecan Valley can put on for those that are not competent to stand trial, and they can be serviced while incarcerated. But that program requires certain things, and you have to have them together in certain areas, and to be able to put them and to do their classes and whatever they need to do to be able to be competent and be released back out and be efficient in the world. We can't facilitate it. We don't have the space to do it. We don't have the staff to do it, obviously, but we don't have the space especially to be able to host those things.
I think we beat this to death. Let's hear from DRG here. Okay.
I was enjoying this conversation.
Well,
Thank you, Eric.
this is music to your ears, I know that. Yeah, we need new jails.
Judge, Commissioners, Sheriff, thank you all for inviting us here today. My name is Wayne Gondek with DRG Architects. Gary Adams here with me today with DRG Architects. This conversation that you all have been having here is the right conversation to have. And you may think that that's strange for the architect to be having that, but please understand my background also is in jail planning. It is as a former deputy director and chief planner for the jail commission for 5 years. So I do understand this process. And as far as the facility needs assessment, that during that period, I did conduct about 75 of those needs assessments for counties. I do understand the limitations there, because there is one process that they go through, and at the end of that assessment, it does tell you all those things that you need to look at in addition to those numbers on how they put those numbers together. That's a very generic process. So after that, they do suggest to do some additional homework on those numbers. But also, as Mr. Wood stated, that to encourage all those alternatives to incarceration, all those pretrial diversions, all those post-trial diversions, because today we can't afford to put everybody in jail, probably that you know we want to put in jail. I mean, the numbers have just gotten that outrageous. But even as much work as we put into all the diversions, the numbers are still a lot higher today than they have been historically. If we look back historically on the numbers of people that are in jail today, statewide, we look back that as that per 1,000 general population, that went back, in the 80s, that we were looking at that 0.8 to 1 per thousand population. That grew through the 90s and the early 2000s to 2 per thousand. Now we're looking at that 3 per thousand. Y'all are somewhere in that 3.3 or something in that range right now, depending on what that population is. And so that just has grown, even with all the diversions and all the creativity that we've come up with our court system and everything else, all the discretionary arrests that we have today, all the citations that a lot of the counties are doing. We still have, a lot of people in jails, and the numbers of jails per 1,000 population. So that's just something to keep in mind, that we've been working, I think, as part of this criminal justice group, and I'm talking about the criminal justice planners, I'm talking about the court system and everybody else. Everybody's been working on this to try to manage the system for many, many decades now, to see how we can deal with this. But incarceration continues to be a necessary component of that. And I think that's one of the things that we're here to talk about today, is how is Hood County going to deal with their incarceration needs and that jail population need today. Currently, you have 192 beds or 192 capacity jail. You know that it is full. It is beyond full. That you're housing inmates out of county, and you have been housing inmates out of county. That is a real issue. The statement was made earlier in this conversation with Mr. Wood. Was talking about the numbers of people in and out of the jail. As far as the efficiency, that you're booking in as many people as you're releasing on a daily basis, and that's a very key issue. That is a very transient number. Yes, we've been talking about, for the last few minutes here, about actually a small portion of the inmates that are held for a long period of time. But if we really look at the most of the population in a county jail, and in county jails in general, that those inmates come in and out on a daily basis quite regularly. So that is a transient population, and that is the intent of the county jail, to handle that as a tool for the sheriff's department, that they can arrest and initiate that criminal justice process, that they can document who they have and determine, can that person be held in jail or released back out on bond. And once that determination is made, a lot of these people that we're talking about today, especially on the misdemeanor end, that you're bringing them back in for their justice in or adjudication from bond, and not all are coming from the jail. So you're dealing with, when you talk about whether it's 400 or 600 cases, not all those are coming out of the jail. A lot of those are people that are on bond. So you're not always just dealing with the people in the jail. So it is a much bigger picture, and we're talking about today about that incarceration need. As y'all have recognized and realized and have dealt with this for many, many years. I think the first time Gary and I were here was sometime in the early 2000s. We came back in 2012, and several times, looking at this issue, trying to resolve. Other architects have stood here and talked to the court and in other annex rooms and here trying to come up with solutions, on the facility and address this. This is not just today that y'all have tried to resolve this, but the jail number of beds, if you're looking at the functional capacity of this, would only have between 80 to 90% of the beds being utilized. And that's in any county jail to properly function, that you need a certain percentage of beds vacant so that you can properly classify and segregate inmates, that you can accept more inmates into your facility, bring them in and properly classify them and then release them. So that's the proper utilization of a county jail. So when we are looking in the planning, and that's part of that facility needs assessment, that when they look at that, they look at one, the peak populations, and two, they look at your classification populations. So they use a percentage on that. Sometimes they will look at your calculations and see, is that 10%, is that 20%, 12%, 18%, depending on whichever. But at least, you're looking at 10% for a peak population. That here, if it goes up on your weekend population, think about this. If you have 70,000 people in the county during the week, on the weekend, how many people come into the county for recreation purposes? Is that 5,000? Is that 10,000? Is that 20,000? I mean, y'all know what that number is, and you know what that impact is probably better than I do here today. But it's a significant number. And when you start talking about that on the number of inmates at 3 per 1,000, that is a significant number if you start looking at how many people would be impacting the jail if you're just talking about a weekend jail. So that number does, that's that peak population. And then you have of course, the classification population. So when we look at the numbers and you look at that F&A that's going to come, that facility needs assessment that's going to come from Mr. Wood, it is going to have those numbers in there. The last one, if I recall correctly, that in 2037 they were recommending you to need 100 or 240 beds at that time. I think the first number that they had in there was to have 192 beds initially. We know that probably doesn't work for you right now, because in 2037, because today that pretty much is a number that you have in population today. In jail population is about 240, or runs 200 to 240, somewhere in that range. And when you start putting on a 10% for peak population, 10% for classification, and a 20% mark just for today, that gets you another 40, 50 inmates. That's 280, almost 300 inmates today. So when we start projecting down the road, that real quickly, we look at the weekend population, we look at the peak population, that we can get to that 350, 400 beds very easily within 10 to 15 years down the road. So what do you do about, how do you get there? And I think that y'all had looked at, okay, best way to get there, let's go build a new facility out there. You said, let's do that, let's program that and go look at the numbers on that. I think everybody fell out of their chairs and then crawled back up and said, y'all are all idiots, Mr. Planners, go away. So now we've come back and we've looked at what is a better way to do that. Well, one way that we've proposed to do this is to take and build additional capacity at the existing jail, which we know the existing jail has tremendous problems with it, both just in the building structure. Let me be cautious on talking about building structure, but the physical plant of the building. I think I already had the structure looked at from a structural engineer. It is structurally sound. But the physical plant of the building has many things that need to be addressed and need to be fixed over time. Mechanical systems, plumbing systems, the walls need to be reinforced in some place, insulation, ceilings that need to be fixed. There's many things that need to be done in the existing facility. Doing that in an occupied space means that you've got to move inmates out. We all know that finding a place for inmates outside of Hood County right now is not an easy task to do. That's very costly, it's very expensive, and it's getting harder and harder to find somebody. I do hear that up in Post, Texas and Garza County, they may have some beds that are coming available up there not too long, but we all know how far it is to Post, Texas up there. What is that, 200 miles or 150 miles or something like that? That's a long way to go. So in looking at this, if we present this, say we add on 200 beds, move the existing population in there, we can come back and start reconstruction or renovation on the existing portion over time, or however you want to do that on a pay-as-you-go basis. You can go back and reinvest and decide how you want to refurbish the existing jail. So that gives you some options on how you want to do that. But our suggestion is that until you do provide additional capacity, you have no real means or ability to go in and fix the problems you have in the existing jail. So we developed a basic concept plan I provided. I think you all have seen some of the drawings there. I provided that to you of a 200 capacity addition. We did also put in a budget to provide an addition for some sheriff's space, to bring back some of the administrative space to get him back working with his, all the law enforcement functions together there, and came up with a budget. Now, that can be done all at one time. That can be done with maybe take some alternates on that, but there's some levels of discussion on that can be looked at as to how to look at that, and then develop a plan of how to go back and renovate the existing portions and go forward with that. The numbers I think y'all see on there are a lot more reasonable, I think, than the previous program. We have seen that the construction market settle down quite a bit over the last year, especially over the last 6 to 9 months. These numbers are somewhat based on probably the most recent project that we did similar to this, in addition to 200 beds in Angelina County. Those beds actually came in less than what I'm showing on the budget here. However, I don't expect that this project's going to, it's not going to be bid today. It's going sometime in the future. So we would expect that this would be, still continuing some escalation there. So I think the $800 a square foot on cost is a good number right now. We do have a contingency in there of 10% contingency. So I think as you get into looking at when you want to do something, though, that needs to be discussed as to if that's move forward and start looking at doing something within the next 6 months or a year. Those numbers are probably pretty reasonable. If you say, well, no, we're going to put this off several years, I can step back and say, I really don't know, because we don't know what the interest rates are going to do, what the bond market does, what the construction market does, or anything else. So I know that's kind of condensed version, but y'all have heard a lot already up here, so I want to kind of get that in front of you and then answer any questions that y'all have in this. If we could, I can show you what we've proposed on the addition there. Up at the top portion, well, the left-hand side, we have the administrative space. Next to that, we have 11 separation cells, some mechanical space, a new laundry space, and that's really because it's more on the female side. You can utilize the female trustees there, males for the kitchen. That kind of divides out that. It keeps that kind of, everybody has some work to do there. We do have an administrative segregation exercise area, and that kind of is near in between some of the separation cells, because right now we really don't have, we have to utilize one of our larger exercise areas for segregation exercise. We do have another multipurpose room, classroom area, but then we get into some flex cells that go back and forth that we can use either for male or female housing, which allows you to deal with your female population as it grows, but also that percentage of female population does go up and down, and as you need it more for males, you can use it more for male population. So that sort of does help you on that classification and separation percentage, and helps you get that closer to, or lessens that number there. We also have some two-person cells there that we've tried to incorporate that more as a utilization for young offenders, and also some of the mental health beds that we try to utilize, that those that are suspected of, especially for suicide, you don't want to isolate them, but sometimes they're a little bit more vulnerable, so you don't want to put them in a large multi-occupancy cell, so that sometimes is a little bit better to have them in a smaller populated cell there. The rest of those are multiple occupancy cells on the upper right-hand corner, and then we have some dormitories, some larger dormitories, 12 capacity dormitories in the lower right-hand corner there that are in a modular arrangement, and then an exercise area, 1,000 square foot exercise area there to serve the new population. In this, we could, and again, we get into a little bit of budgeting depending on what, the amount of funds that y'all want to put towards this project. One of the things that could be done is that that pod for the dormitories there, that could be an alternate bid and could be shelled in on the base bid and finished out on the alternate bid to see where those prices come in at. That's about a $4 million chunk there, so that's something to be looked at on that budget. Because
Which part is that?
that's the 12 person, 12 capacity dormitories.
On the lower right?
Lower right-hand side. And that's really what you want to, have in there. You all have some large dormitories already, and that's the last part you want to add into there. So the more compartmentation you have in the jail, obviously the more separation you have and the more classification capability you have. So that's what you want to build in first, and then, as your population grows, you can put the dormitories in. The jail commission does limit us to 40% total dormitory capacity, so that we are limited on that anyway. So that's why we don't put any more dormitories in than 40% total. And we have to count that for everything in here.
So what constitutes a dormitory? Does 10? Where is that line?
More than one?
9 or more.
9 or more.
Okay.
That's a very good question. Yes, they have that at 9 or more.
Only 40%? No
Yes.
more than 40%?
Yes, ma'am. And below that, it's called a multiple occupancy cell. And then, of course, your single occupancy cells. Now you do have to have 10% single occupancy cells. The first 20 of those have to be separation cells, and those would be the ones with showers. After that, you can't have single cells with day rooms. The problem with that is that gets into a lot of movement of inmates back and forth to the day room. It takes officers time and everything. So we have provided here more separation cells. In other words, we put a shower in each one to where they are in that cell and stay in that cell. They don't move to a day room. And those are used for administrative and disciplinary segregation. Those are inmates that basically have to be either protected by from others or protect others from them, or are in there for disciplinary reasons. Now, this addition line up there is about in line, if y'all have been around the facility, where that fence line is on the property out there right now. It may be a little bit beyond there on the one part, but it's right about that line.
And thank you for talking to me on Friday for quite a while. So you'd mentioned that when I asked about the risk of connecting to the current jail, could you walk us through that again? Because I know there's been discussion about anytime you do construction on an existing building, there's risks, and you kind of got me comfortable that this was okay.
We have done a lot of construction of adding to facilities. And of course, when we do the construction, the new construction will not be building off of or supporting from the existing. There'll be two independent structures that now we will dial in and make sure that those two structures are basically will move together. If they move, they will move usually together, so at least at the walk points and corridors that you don't have them coming up and moving independently. But we do make sure that we have an expansion joint between them, otherwise, so that you're never going to get them to move exactly the same for the most part. But at all the corridors, we tie those off. And then the rest of the buildings do have to function independently. One of the good things about the amount of space that we are covering now on that side there is that wall, the exterior wall of the existing is not insulated. Mm-hmm. So now our new wall will cover that, and there'll be conditioned space. Our new exterior wall will be insulated. So we do now have two, the exterior wall that it's not insulated now becomes an interior wall. So we solved that problem. Mm-hmm. And just have to deal with it along the other sides. And there's some fairly economical ways to deal with that exterior wall. You can apply insulation to the outside. You can do it with some nice, I don't like using a lot of plaster or EFIS type systems, those exterior insulation systems, because they just don't hold up. When we look at jails, I have a jail south of San Antonio that we've added onto 4 times. And the first one, we opened up the first one in '81. So we've added on 4 times since then, and went from a 24 capacity, and it's now over 300 capacity. So they didn't want to, counties, this, they don't like throwing away anything that they started with. And we've refurbished the first part time and time again. And so we've had to develop over time, different ways to, every time you add on to something, you've got to bring up, the other part. Mm-hmm. Up to the new standards, especially when you start refurbishing. So we have found many ways of increasing, the efficiency, like bringing this up to building codes. But we know that these things have to last for a long time.
Is that the one in Medina County, or there's another one?
Oh, that was in Atascosa County.
Okay.
Medina County is a new facility.
Yeah,
that was only 20 years old. So.
Yeah, it looks good.
Yes, but the main thing is that we use sometimes to use a metal siding, a pre-finished kind or finished metal siding over the insulation that we're adding to the outside, and that has seemed to hold up good for several decades. To go back over and clad some of these buildings that didn't have sufficient insulation on them. It's lightweight. You don't have to add to the structure. You don't have to build out other metal supports or anything for them. So that's one way that we can get the insulation factor back onto the existing building there. But in looking at this, this could be a phase one or a phase whatever it is of a multiple faceted program. You can continue to add on to here. We still have property to add on. It fits very well. There's still a main corridor that you could extend down from with this, and you could always work back to the existing from here. So that's what we've tried to do, is to give you a way that you can construct this, and yes, Commissioner Bailey, like we did in Medina County. In Medina County, and I think Commissioner Lutz did come and talk to you all about that process of building the new portion, moving the inmates to the new portion, and then backing into the existing jail and refurbishing the existing jail.
What's the build time for this addition of the 209 bed? What's the estimated build time?
Probably 14 to 16 months.
I'm sorry?
Probably 14 to 16 months. We used to say that something like this would take about 12 months, but still with some of the shipping time of some of the, and delivery times of some of the different items, especially switch gears and things of that nature, just so the mechanical systems, we just don't see that doing it within a year is just really tight to get it to that.
In other words, by the time it gets built and the jail commission does their inspection, 18 months? Would that be a safe assessment?
They've been pretty good with us. Then that 16 months would be the time that the jail commission would be there. But as far as getting staffed up and moving all your mattresses in there, making sure that the sheriff staff goes through and does their shakedown and everything in the facility and does their training inside the facility. Prior to the time that you actually move the inmates over is somewhere around that, somewhere in that window, that 16 to 18
I mean, I'm
months.
just trying to get
Yes, sir.
an area of where we're at.
But does that include? Right, I was going to ask, is that from turning dirt to cutting the ribbon?
That's the turning dirt.
Okay, so what about the pre-work?
Yeah, the design time, I mean, you're looking at 6 months to get to that point.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
6 months to get to the construction time. Yeah, because we have to take this 3 times or submit it 3 times to the jail commission. We can keep working on it during that time, but that initial meeting with the jail commission, we like to try to do that, especially on something like this, possibly in person or a virtual meeting to have them look at this and discuss this with representatives of the court and of the sheriff's office, to sit down and discuss the flow and function of this and how it's going to be tied back in, a little bit about the next steps of what is going to be done in the future, so that they know, is there something else that we need to be adding in this that's not going to be taken care of in the future? Because those are the questions that they will ask, is what happens next.
So total time, 22 to 24 months.
Yes, ma'am. And that's when Commissioner Engel was making those comments about, all these, where it's not going to happen now, and I'm sitting there hearing about all the diversions and everything else. Yes, you need to be doing everything that you can to deal with that jail population, because it's going to continue to rise, and you're not going to solve this problem. Even if you told us, walk out that door and get this done today, it's going to be 2 years before you have a facility, but that's if you made up your minds today of going forward, and that's the burden that's on the court, is that yes, you're dealing with something that is not going to get solved today. I mean, this is something that no matter what your decision is, it's still going to be a burden on the sheriff's office for 2 years, and you're still going to have to do everything you can to manage this over the next 2 years. They don't have cash?
They may, I don't
What?
You've got that issue in there too.
Financing, you're right.
Ma'am? I'm sorry. Oh.
I'm Gary Adams, the old guy. What we see is this project, but you've got to figure out a way to fund it. Whether you issue COs or you go out for a bond issue, all of those things are time sensitive also. COs, you can move a lot faster, but it has some withdrawals and if you get protest. If you're going to do a bond election, you could possibly do it in November. If not, then you're going to have to move up to next May, is that right?
Yeah, you could do it either November or May because we don't this year, in an even number year, odd number year you can do it because we have an election runoff this May, so you can't do it. But next year you would be able to do it. But again, I can't give you legal advice. I'm just talking about things that I may know a little bit about. So I'm not giving you any bond advice or anything else here, but just general knowledge. Sometime in August would be the time when you'd have to call an election for November. And then I think it's February that you'd have to call an election for May. So those are kind of the timing points that as you're working through that cycle that you'd have to make those decisions on when you'd have to do that. Now, as Gary said, if you're looking at something on COs or certificates of obligation, if you're going to try to say, okay, we're going to issue our intent, and then if we had a petition, come back to 5% of the registered voters, we still want to make that August deadline if somebody wants us to have a referendum for November, so it gets difficult to try to time that to get that before the next election, or all of a sudden now you're in another cycle, like in May or whatever, if you do get a petition up. So sometimes you can get pushed back if you don't move quickly on some things.
That's why it was critical when we're talking about 24 months, that you also have to look at financing before that 24 months you can kick some.
Well, the main reason is because you can't really take, I believe there's some restriction on taking proposals or bids from contractors unless you have your financing. In the commercial world you can do it, but in the public world we can't. You can't go ask contractors for prices on projects when you don't have the money taken care of. So you have to have the funding in place to go solicit bids from contractors.
Well, if you're looking at a bond issue, that would be doable for November if the decisions were made, but you got to tack on another 5% for them to do the bond. So you got to keep that in mind too. The cost of actually letting a bond needs to be added to this number that you've provided with. You got 20% of soft costs in your projections. So you're looking at 25% of the package is just going to be contingency plans, bond letting, fees.
And Commissioner, just to address your 10%, because that budget, that's a question to the court when we talk about that on contingency allowance. Is that, I used to put these budgets together with 5% on contingencies, and that's how well I thought I was budgeting. I don't do that anymore with what has happened in the construction market over the last 4 to 5 years, because it's gone all over the place. So, but that number, that 10% has to be allocated someplace, and that's whether or not you want to put that into the bonds, and you don't have to sell that many in bonds, but that number needs to come out of someplace and make that decision. Do you have that in reserves? Do you have that in a place where could you pull that from someplace else, or do you want to make that part of the bond package if you had to expend that money? So that's a discussion that needs to be had as to, but somewhere you need to have that cushion or allowance of if the project, if the bids come in high, or if you decide to add some things in there, or whatever the reason being, that there needs to be a number out there, and whether that's 5% or 10%, that initial number up there, that the subtotal line is probably not that final line. And like you say, if you have financing on there, that would be a line item number that also needs to be in that budget of where that needs to be at. Like we talked before, these numbers right now, the $800 a square foot, I know are more than what we have paid previously, at this point, but I still see these numbers going up. Our construction costs are still escalating. If y'all know at this point, say, and I'm just being hypothetical here, if y'all came back to me and said, Wayne, 32 million is too much, we've got to pull that back, tell us what we can do for 30 million or 28 million, or we want to go out there and try to do this. That's where I was talking about that, having that alternate of that dormitory area, and say, okay, our base proposal bid is going to be somewhere around the $28 million mark, and then we're going to have our alternate bid, and if it comes in less, then we're going to go and build the whole thing. If it doesn't, we're going to shell in that space, and we're going to be missing 48 beds. And you're still going to have to be shipping this many people. Or you're going to have to make that up out of some other funding method. Now, that's not a good solution, but that's a what-if solution if y'all decide to limit the amount that you're going to put towards the project. I'm trying to give y'all some options and some ways to look at this. If y'all have $50 million, I tell you, no, let's do proposal A plus go ahead and fund the rest of the renovation. But we're not at that point, I don't think. So I'm trying to be as straightforward and candid about this as I can.
When you say then you would be shipping, if you didn't build the 12 capacity dorms, then you'd be shipping. Does that assume that we'd be at capacity? Because we might not need 401 beds in 24 months.
If you are vacating the jail.
That was, meaning if we started
the next step of when you're vacating,
when we were renovating the current jail, and we wouldn't have room to put them over to the new.
Or you'd have to do your renovation
small sections
in
at a time.
Smaller portion.
Okay, I just wanted to understand. Thank you.
Just for information for the court, the budget for out-of-county housing, we have used 72% of what was budgeted for this year's out-of-county budget. I mean, what we've got left is 2.37 months of money left, which means we're going to have to move money into that before we do the new budget. I mean, that's just what's coming down the pipe. Because we've used $573,382.50 from November to April of this past Monday. So that is, and the budget did, for that was $800,000. So that's where we're, that's what we've got. And if we're 2 years down the road before it's occupancy ready, then that number is going to continue to climb, because we've spent now over $2 million in the last 3 fiscal years plus, what we've used out of this this fiscal year already. It's over 2 mil.
Probably be at 1.2 by the end of this year.
Odds are high based on the numbers and the
That's-
fact that we've got 77 out of county as of yesterday, and 51 of them are in Johnson,
Which is the highest
which is the
daily.
highest. That's correct.
There is maybe a little bit of a silver lining when I was talking to my fellow commissioner in Tarrant County to understand what they were doing. And when they are moving, they're going to move the people back from Garza when their renovations are done. And then they're also renovating another building, but it's minimum security. But they said by December that, well, this one commissioner, of course, he hadn't talked to any of the rest of the court, but he anticipated that they might have 800 available beds, and they would be willing to work with us on housing if we needed that during this renovation or before. So that's an option. I'm sure that Sheriff Deeds has a great relationship with Sheriff Wellborn up there.
Do we have anything else? This was good. This is something really good to consider.
A lot better than 100 million.
Just give us some money too, where we can. If you win the lottery, would y'all?
Judge, if I win the lottery, then I'll come.
He'll be gone.
Way through to something.
We'll never see him again if he wins the lottery.
All right. Well, thank y'all very much for coming down. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Good with y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And with that, we are adjourning this meeting.